1800s and very early 1900s, American architects still hadn't quite figured out what they wanted their own aesthetic to be. And they were still looking towards older European buildings for inspiration, kind of copying and pasting those designs over here in America in the most American way they knew how, as cross over it every single day on average. And just beyond it is the next door neighbor to the Wrigley building. We're looking at Trump International Hotel and Tower. And when you look all the way up, you'll see it's got 1, 2, 3 different setbacks, or patio terraces as they're also called. And these setbacks, the river on the left-hand side, and the third tallest setback also on the right is the same height as the AMA Medical Plaza. That's the black box building behind Trump Tower that we can't really see at all quite yet. But the towers of Marina City in the 50s and 60s, this area of the river was very commercial. Hardly anyone actually lived downtown. And architect Bertrand Goldberg wanted to make it easier for people to do so. So he designed Marina City to have everything you would need all in one place. On the very top floors, there are pie slice or petal-shaped apartments. They start off really small by the door, and then they get wider as you go out. Below that, there's a couple different levels of valet parking for your car. Then a complex with some restaurants, some retail opportunities. The House of Blues is now downstairs. And the number one thing that I look for whenever I'm apartment hunting, a place to park my luxury yacht. All the way down at the very bottom, of course. All the way up to that Greek temple shape up at the very top. Now, 77 West Wacker is done in a style called neoclassical. Neo meaning new, classical meaning, well, classical. More contemporary. We often call this building the Parthenon on steroids because it's got this kind of bulked up, almost futuristic look. And a fun fact about Ricardo Bofia, the Spanish architect of 77 West Wacker, you know, when he designed his first building, he was of the Chicago Riverwalk, 1.3 miles of open public recreational space. You saw some restaurants previously. There are places to go kayaking and fishing. Brand new amenity added to the Riverwalk, hot tub boats. It's literally a floating hot tub that you can just drive around the river. On the timing of our tour, we might catch the L train going by over that top platform. Yes, perfect timing. I love it when that happens. You know, the train in Chicago is referred to as the L because most of the platforms are elevated up off of the ground. Wells Street Bridge is a great example of what's referred to as a vascular style bridge. That's a trench phrase. It really just translates to mean seesaw. And it helps describe the way the mechanisms inside the bridges work to help them raise and lower them on the way back up. But on the right-hand side, we're looking at the Art Deco behemoth that is the Merchandise Mart. Art Deco style architecture is characterized by deep inset windows, long vertical lines, repeating geometric patterns, and metal finishings on the outside. At the front of the Merchandise Mart, we've even got this row of giant Pez dispenser heads, which is what I wish they were. There's no candy involved. They are busts of the titans of industry of Chicago's history. Or if you are my junior year history teacher, the robber barons of Chicago's history, called Wolf Point. And this is where all three branches of the Chicago River meet in the middle. We're gonna make a right-hand turn, go up the North Branch, but before we do, let's meet this celebrity directly to our left. This is the Nuveen building, contextual style architecture. That curve along the front mimics the curve of the river just below it. Completed in 1983, but I bet you've seen it before in the 1985 classic Chicago film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That is the building where Ferris's dad works. Now, directly in front of us, we've got more contextual style architecture at River Point with its parabolic arches cut out of the top and the bottom. That arch along the bottom allows for the Metra and Amtrak train lines underneath to run unhindered. But in all honesty, I like this building for a far more basic reason. Doesn't it look like a giant Hot Pocket? Right? So I knew I couldn't be the only hungry person on board the boat right now. And speaking of being hungry, I can guarantee it's directly in front of the boat. Fulton House is the oldest building we're going to see on the river today, built in 1898 to be the cold storage facility for a meat processing company. So the whole building worked basically like a giant freezer. There's some pretty nice and actually surprisingly affordable apartments. The Carroll Street Railroad Bridge. Now there used to be a railroad that went from here all the way out to Navy Pier. We'll end up there later. The Carroll Street Railroad Bridge is always stored in the upright position. It's actually been decommissioned since it is designed by architect Harry Weiss in the 1980s. Now, Harry Weiss was very inspired by nautical elements. You can see some round, almost porthole-esque windows that are built in. And I love the river cottages. I think they've got this really cutie, kind of bohemian. It's got this kind of Y-shaped cantilevered base. Now, the base of this building is only about 39 feet across, and it only takes up 20% of the plot of land that it's built on. Looks a little precarious, right? It is a tall building. We are in Chicago, the Windy City, so it may not shock you to hear that most of the skyscrapers here do actually sway in the wind on a really windy day. Now, this sway is called drift. There are three big ways that engineers try to counteract drift with their designs. We're going to learn about all three. About 160,000 gallons of water. And they're calibrated in a way that when the building sways in the wind, the water in the tanks sloshes in the opposite direction and kind of swallows or dampens the inertia caused by the swaying building, which is why these tanks of water are called inertial slosh dampers. We'll learn about the other two ways engineers counteract drift later when we have examples. America building stands at 817 feet tall, and this one also has some very interesting stuff going on at its base. Now, there is an ordinance in Chicago that any new building built along the river has to have at least a 30-foot setback at its base. And that setback allows for there to be public access to the waterfront. And we can see here how the Bank of America building does it. Those first 3 floors, they're set back. While the rest of the floors, they get to take advantage of that extra space. They hang over. They're supported by these metal-covered, steel beam, tripod legs. Now this setback ordinance is all built along the river in chronological order. Now we're going to take our time machine all the way back to the late 1920s. On the right-hand side at the beautiful Art Deco 2 Riverside Plaza. Formerly home to the Chicago Daily News. You can see all these ancient-looking carvings built into the side that are actually meant to represent different moments from journalism history. Recognizable as Art Deco because it's got those deep inset windows with long vertical lines. And I always tell people that the vertical lines here, they always remind me of like a pinstripe suit. Like maybe something they would wear during the Great Gatsby. And that's the time period we're talking about. Late 1920s, remember. Decadence, excess, wealth, optimism about the future. But people went back to work and they got a new, conservative, austere movement of architecture called Black Box Modernism. This first building on the right, this is Gateway Center 1, and just next door is its identical twin, Gateway Center 2. Now, I use the words conservative and austere to describe these buildings because of the way that they look. There's no ornate detail. It's all simple lines, sharp angles, and really kind of harsh, dark colors. But this movement, Black Box Modernism, was founded by German architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. And I bet some of you will recognize his catchphrase, less is more. He believed in the practicality and the functionality of a building over anything else. He thought a building was truly beautiful if it was doing only and exactly what it was built to do. He didn't have time to sit around and decide how many gargoyles he was going to throw up on this building. But at the beginning of the 70s, architects take one look at Black Box Modernism and they're bored. So they want to loosen up and get more creative. This is Gateway Center 3. Great example of international style, a softening of, a transition away from Black Box Modernism. So still does have a lot of those similar features, right? Simple lines, sharp angles, that shows up in the 1980s. Gateway Center 4 at the end of the street has another curve along the front that highlights the curve of the river just below it. And the color and the texture of the glass here is really meant to mimic the color and the texture of the water in the river itself. Now, for all my friends on board who are not from Chicago, seems like there are a lot. 300 South Wacker shows you exactly where we are on the river right now. And if you look above it, you can see that Y shape of Wolf Point printed just on top. Inside has already made its feature film debut. In fact, some of you might even recognize this building from when they zip-lined over from the top of Gateway Center 4 in the opening sequences of Christopher Nolan's Batman film, The Dark Knight, starring Heath Ledger. This is Gotham City Bank we're looking at, also known as the... And they needed a massive post office to handle all that incoming and outgoing mail. At the time, no better architectural style than Art Deco, with its deep inset windows and long vertical lines. About 4 years ago, an almost $1 billion renovation project turned this building into offices for companies like Uber, Walgreens, Pepsi. It's so big, the high city. And if this one looks familiar to you, it's probably because it was also designed by Bertrand Goldberg. That's the same guy who did the twin corncob-shaped towers of Marina City that we saw earlier on in the tour. Now, Bertrand Goldberg, he was super cool. He actually was a student of Mies van der Rohe, the father of black box modernism. And Mies van der Rohe, he loved his right angles, right? Boxes on top of boxes. Now, Bertrand Goldberg believed that since there are no right angles, and I like pointing these out because of all the development that's happening on the South Branch. Not only is a 78 being constructed, the city also has plans to extend the Riverwalk. Go all the way down the South Branch. You could walk along the river to Chinatown, which I think will rock. And Willis Tower. Just in front of it is the Queen, 311 South Wacker with her crown of barrels. And off in the distance on the right-hand side is the Diva Princess, the Art Deco style Chicago Board of Trade with that black triangular roof and a 30-foot tall statue up on top. Now that statue is also done in an Art Deco style. It's very streamlined, actually kind of futuristic looking. Famously faceless is how we refer to that statue. And it's not a man up there, it's a woman. And it's not just any woman, it's Ceres, the Roman goddess of grain and agriculture. Now she's on that building because they originally traded agriculture futures there, also known as Sears Tower. Black box building, 2 white antennas, 1,451 feet tall, makes this the tallest building in Chicago. Definitely going to sway in the wind a little bit. However, it does not have those giant tanks of water, inertial slash dampers. Instead, it has a bundled base. When you look at this building, you can see that there are 9 different smaller towers that are all bundled together at the base. That gives it more stability at the bottom rather than at the top. But listen, I think Willis Tower could benefit from some, a grocery warehouse. Today, it's the office building for the Encyclopedia Britannica company. And it's a gorgeous building, but it's the most lopsided one in Chicago because in the 20s, LaSalle Street, this bridge we're about to cross underneath, actually had to be widened. So the entire left-hand side of the Reed Murdoch Center was demolished. They widened the street left. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bays of windows. Well, on the right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty impressive feat of engineering, huh? And speaking of impressive, okay, we're on a red carpet. What I like to call the Danny DeVito building. It's short, it's squad, it's got a ton of personality, and look at the guy. He's hanging out between 2. Wackers, it's actually called, is the only true example of an architectural style called Brutalism that we have on the river. Now, Brutalism is really like the muscular cousin to black box modernism. It uses really heavy, raw material that's really supposed to invoke the feeling of safety and security that you get from being in an underground bunker during the Cold War, which is really when Brutalism became popular. Country. On top of the Jewelers Building. Now, there's a lot of hot goss about the Jewelers Building, which is why I'm here to put those rumors to rest. Now, many people think notorious gangster Al Capone used to hang out in the nightclub that was once in the dome on top of the Jewelers Building. But once you look into it, there's actually no evidence that he ever went up there. I think he was actually in jail at the time where the Stratosphere was really popular. But if you want to know, green and gold, Art Deco style, carbide and carbon building, built quite literally as a protest during Prohibition. You want to drink champagne? Well, that's fine. We'll just build a giant bottle of it to loom over the city instead. green terracotta tile to mimic that green glass of a champagne bottle that is real gold leaf all the way up the building. The base of Mather Tower is 100 feet by 65 feet, while the penthouse up at the very top is only 9 feet across. 1920 zoning laws required that penthouses could be no larger than 20% the size of their base. Just next door is the London Guarantee Building. Excuse me, now home to the London House Hotel. If you look above that logo, you'll see the glass balconies of the London House Rooftop Bar. That's the second highest rated rooftop bar in Tribune Tower. Formerly home to the Chicago Tribune. They've held on to that sign on the side, but today it's more luxury apartments. French Gothic Revival style though, the top of this building is modeled after a Gothic cathedral in Normandy, France. And the design for Tribune Tower was actually selected from a nationwide contest. Robert McCormick, who owned the Tribune, comes historical significance. The founding father of Chicago is widely considered to be a man named Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. And when he built his home here, who here is our old friend, Adrian Smith, the world's tallest architect who designed Trump Tower, which is now behind us. But he's not the only person who gets this. Is James Hardy. Don't look at that building. I hate that building. It's ugly. Look at the one just behind it. And you'll see the wavy balconies on the outside of Aqua Tower, designed by Chicago It Girl architect Jeannie Gang. No, against side. And we'll go over pricing and stuff for those later. I don't like to freak anyone out before the tour's over. You know, on the outside of the St. Regis, there are 6 different shades of gradient blue and green glass. They really highlight the curves on the building, and I think they work as a great kind of physical metaphor, or visual metaphor rather, for how very proud of Jeannie Gang. But nobody claps, so I guess you guys hate women. It's my first time trying out that joke. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. Okay, we're headed out towards Navy Pier. Navy Pier, that is Lake Point Tower. Tons of celebrities have owned property here, including Tom Cruise, Sammy Sosa, Kurt Russell, and Goldie Hawn. It is also the only private building built in front of the Merchandise Mart. However, when Lake Point Tower would be public space, kind of keeping in the spirit of what Montgomery Ward wanted. The city approved those plans. They built the building. They lied. Nothing about that building is open to the public, so they've been fined a hefty amount here, renamed to honor fallen Navy personnel after World War I. Tons of fun stuff out there. The Children's Museum, the Ferris wheel, Chicago Shakespeare Theater is putting on a play right now that stars Jason Alexander, who played George on Seinfeld. And then in just a few minutes, we're going to head back into our dock at Michigan Avenue. We will meet a couple new celebrities, talk about some old ones, and then we'll head back into our dock and we will call it a wrap on our red carpet cruise. Thank you. On the North Branch. Now, you can tell that he also designed Swiss Hotel because it's another triangularly shaped building. Harry Weiss was a triangle freak. He loved home on top of the Intercontinental Hotel. And I like to think that onion-shaped dome is paying homage to the stinky used in that way. It was turned into a viewing platform for a few years. Today, unfortunately, it's closed to the public, but you can still enjoy it if you're hanging out in downtown Chicago at night. Look up. Keep your eyes peeled for that onion-shaped dome because you'll see it illuminated in all sorts of beautiful, different colors. Off of the boat, hanging out at the top of the stairs. That way, if you have any questions, any feedback for me, I will take anything you want to give me up at the top of those stairs. Oh my God! The bridges are raising. Great. I'm still going to go over our housekeeping. If you brought anything on board with you, we ask that you take it home with you. This boat is a black hole. I'm here 5 days a week and I lose things on this boat all the time. So if you ever want to see your purse or your child ever again, take them home with you now. You can leave your garbage on board in the trash cans at the front or as you exit. I just want to say thank you for joining. We saw some incredible iconic buildings. We met some of the rising stars. We even let the evolution of architecture take the spotlight when we went back in time on our time machine. And even though the curtain is falling on your time on the river, there are plenty of other landmarks, activities, museums, restaurants, so that your red carpet experience can continue even when you're off the boat. And if you guys are the one doing it, it is sure to be a star-studded time. So once again, my name is Stephanie. On behalf of the captain, our awesome crew, everyone here at Shoreline Sightseeing, please remain seated and then get ready to make your grand re-entrance back into the best after